Being set apart doesn't always look sacred while you're living it. Most times it feels like you're wandering through a season that doesn't make sense, like everyone else got the memo except you. When God chooses you, he doesn't announce it with celebration, he announces it with separation. Suddenly the people you counted on don't understand you anymore. The rooms you used to fit in start feeling too small. The conversations you once enjoyed feel draining. And you start wondering, why do I feel so different? Why do I feel so alone in a world full of people? But what you're feeling isn't rejection. It's redirection. It's God slowly pulling you away from places where your purpose would suffocate. Sometimes God has to isolate you so he can introduce you to who you really are. Because if he lets too many voices surround you, you'll start mistaking their expectations for his instructions. And one thing about being chosen is that God won't allow you to stay comfortable in environments that limit your growth. You can try to blend in, you can try to shrink, you can try to be what people knew you as, but when God has marked you, even your attempts to fit in eventually fall apart. You'll feel that nudge, that restlessness, that quiet discomfort reminding you this isn't you anymore. And you may not understand it yet, but that discomfort is God's mercy. It's him saying, I love you too much to let you settle. When you're chosen, God starts removing things you didn't realize were weighing you down. You may think you lost a friendship, you may think a relationship ended, you may think an opportunity slipped away. But from heaven's perspective, God is clearing space. He's removing what can't hold you in your next season. He's pulling you out of overcrowded environments so he can plant you in purpose. And sometimes that process feels like being uprooted. But being uprooted doesn't mean you're dying. It means you're being transplanted. It means God has seen that you've outgrown the soil you were in, and now he's taking you somewhere where your roots will finally have room to expand. You may be in a season where conversations feel shallow and connections feel distant, and you're wondering what's wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. You're evolving. Your spirit is awakening. The things that once entertained you don't anymore. The people who once validated you can't anymore. The distractions that once kept you busy bore you now. And it's not because you're broken. It's because you're becoming. God is stretching your capacity, enlarging your identity, and reshaping your appetite. The loneliness you feel is actually the echo of God calling you higher. Being chosen often feels like walking through a hallway with all the doors behind you shutting at once. You hear the locks click, you see no way back, and the only direction left is forward into a space you don't fully understand. And fear starts whispering, you're isolated, but faith whispers louder, you're being escorted. God closes doors not to trap you, but to protect you from going back to places he delivered you from. If the old room stayed open, you'd be tempted to revisit old versions of yourself. And God doesn't want you to go back to familiar dysfunction. He wants you to step forward into unfamiliar destiny. There are moments when the loneliness feels overwhelming, not because you don't have people, but because you don't have the right people. Chosen ones can be surrounded and still feel unseen. You can have a circle and still feel like you're standing on the outside. And that feeling isn't accidental, it's divine. God is teaching you that approval is not your oxygen. He's teaching you that applause is not your assignment. He's teaching you that connection is not your identity. He's teaching you how to stand without needing someone to hold you up. Sometimes God hides you. He hides you from rooms you thought you wanted. He hides you from recognition you prayed for. He hides you from validation you chased, and you start thinking it's punishment. But it's protection. God hides you until the version of you he's developing can withstand the spotlight he's preparing. Because what good is influence if you don't yet have the identity to carry it? What good is opportunity if you don't yet have the discipline to sustain it? What good is a platform if you don't yet have the character to protect it? God hides you so when he reveals you, no situation, no person, no attack can pull you back into who you used to be. You might feel disconnected from everything familiar because God is trying to connect you to something eternal. He's trying to get your attention. He's trying to speak to the parts of you you've been avoiding. He's trying to heal things you didn't tell anybody about. He's trying to elevate you beyond what your past tried to convince you you'd never be. Isolation becomes the classroom where God teaches you identity. And when God teaches you who you are, no one can unteach it. Every chosen one goes through a season where it feels like God hit pause on their life. Friends are advancing, opportunities are happening for everyone else. People are celebrating, building, growing, and you're sitting in a quiet space wondering why your life isn't moving. But what looks like a pause is actually God pulling you into alignment. He slows you down so your purpose can catch up with your pace. He quiets your environment so your spirit can hear what your mind has been ignoring. He stills your world so he can steady your heart. You may feel lonely, but you're not alone. You may feel misunderstood, but you're not misplaced. You may feel set apart, but you're not forgotten. God is separating you because he's shaping you. He's pruning you because he's preparing you. He's isolating you because he's elevating you. And when God gets finished with this version of you, the people who once questioned your distance will witness your destiny. The same people who wondered why you changed will soon understand that God was changing you for something greater. Here's the truth. Being chosen doesn't first feel like being crowned. It feels like being called out. Called out of old habits, called out of shallow relationships, called out of hidden insecurities, called out of environments that were comfortable but not aligned. And God is saying, if I'm pulling you away, it's because I'm about to pull you up. And when God sets you apart, it's because he's preparing to set you above. Brokenness has a way of making you question everything, your worth, your purpose, your strength, even your belonging. There are moments when life hits so hard that you're left holding the pieces of who you were, wondering how God could possibly use what feels so shattered. And it's in those moments when you're sitting in the middle of your own fragments that you start asking, why me? Why now? Why like this? But what if the breaking wasn't meant to destroy you? What if it was meant to open you? See, we're conditioned to believe that broken means useless, that broken means discarded. That broken means disqualified, but God sees brokenness differently. He sees it as access. He sees it as an opening he can pour into. He sees it as the moment the shell you built to survive finally cracks enough for the healing you've been avoiding to slip through. Sometimes the version of you that protected you in the last season is too hardened to receive what God wants to give you in the next one. And so God allows the breaking not to punish you, but to free you from the walls you built around your heart. We don't talk about how breaking exposes things we didn't even know we were carrying. Old wounds we buried because we didn't know how to treat them. Traumas we minimized because survival required pretending they didn't hurt. Lies we believed about ourselves because someone planted them in us at an age too young to defend ourselves. When God allows that breaking to happen, he's not trying to make you relive the pain. He's trying to release you from it. Because you can't steward purpose while holding on to poison, and sometimes the breaking happens in silence. You're smiling on the outside, but your soul is splintering when nobody sees. You're functioning, you're showing up, you're handling life, but inside you feel like you're slowly collapsing under the weight of expectations, disappointments, and pressure. But even in that silent breaking, God is present. He's watching over every fragment. He's keeping track of every tear. He's gathering every shattered piece with care, not because he wants to put you back the way you were, but because he wants to rebuild you into who you were always meant to be. There's a kind of brokenness that comes from life happening, loss, betrayal, failure, disappointment. But then there's another kind of brokenness, the kind God allows. That breaking feels different. It feels strategic. It feels intentional. It feels like God stripping away everything you leaned on so you'll finally lean on him. And if you've ever walked through that kind of breaking, you know it doesn't feel holy when you're in it. It feels like everything stable is collapsing. It feels like God is quiet. It feels like your prayers bounce back unanswered. It feels like you're being undone. But later, when you look back, you realize it wasn't heartbreak. It was heart surgery. We love the idea of transformation, but transformation always requires tearing. It requires God pulling apart the version of you that life shaped so he can rebuild the version of you he intended. Sometimes the breaking comes right after you prayed for breakthrough. You asked God for strength, and suddenly everything you relied on crumbled. You asked for direction, and suddenly everything familiar disappeared. You asked for growth, and suddenly God placed you in situations that stretched you until you questioned your own identity. But what if the breaking was the answer? What if God had to break what you built so he could reveal what he designed? We don't realize how